Pedagogies in Secondary Schools, and we're looking at our second week of material, which is the nature of digital pedagogy. What is it? Our outcomes for the week, fairly straightforward: low-level and high-level pedagogies, why you need both. They're part of the one continuum. We're going to look at the context of use for each. There's times when, for instance, direct instruction, which is a low-level pedagogy, is appropriate. And then there's other times when the teacher disappears and lets the students take over the classroom, and we've got high-level knowledge, conversations and narratives taking place. We're also going to define your current understanding of how you as a teacher will adopt these, look at some of the features of productive pedagogies, and reflect on SAMA and your personal experiences and in ICTs and insights from your blog colleagues. So really that's assessment or reflection 2.2. So where we were. The introduction: teachers should be using productive pedagogies, and there's three real questions they had to answer. Are all the students I teach, regardless of background, engaged in intellectually challenging and relevant curriculum in a supportive environment? Secondly, how do my teaching and assessment practices support or hinder this? And the third thing is, what opportunities do I have to critically reflect on my work with my colleagues? Now, these are the three questions that drive the productive pedagogies argument. Now, it comes from Peter Freebody led this particular debate here in Australia, and Peter was my PhD supervisor right back in the year 2000, and he worked for Griffith University and for the Studies Authority in Queensland. And he came up with 20, as you can see them, they're all listed there, 20 productive pedagogies. So clearly teachers have a lot of choice and a lot of targets that you can hit, or contrarily you can miss in a classroom. Let's look at some of them. The pedagogical continua. At one end we've got higher order thinking, and it's about students, involves the transformation of information and ideas. Students combine facts and ideas. They synthesize, generalize, explain, hypothesize, or arrive at some conclusion or interpretation. Manipulating information and ideas through these processes allows students to solve problems, gain understanding, and discover new meanings. So you can see the complexity of that. You know, there's actually value judgments attached to higher order thinking. It's obviously desirable. It's the holy grail. Lower order thinking occurs when students are asked to receive or recite factual information, or to employ rules and algorithms through repetitive routines. The process is to simply transmit knowledge. Now, if you are a student in China, if you are a student in India, or if you're a student in Cape York, you will be the recipient of this kind of pedagogy. It is direct instruction, okay, direct teaching. And we'll look at some of these. And again, there's room for both of these extremes in any teacher's repertoire. And we'll look at what all this week is about. It's about you forming your own ideas of what a pedagogy is and what that might look like in a digital environment. So it's a continuum. So here's one example, for instance, of deep knowledge. And as you can see, in the middle of the classroom, we've got this awkward situation where different students are going to be engaged in routine lower order thinking for a good share of the lesson. There is at least one significant question or activity in which some students perform some higher order thinking. So that's basically your average class. At the top of the continuum, we've got almost all students, almost all of the time, are engaged in higher order thinking. At the bottom of the continuum, students are engaged only in lower order thinking. They receive or recite or participate in routine practices. In no activities during the lesson do students go beyond simple reproduction of knowledge. And for all 20 productive pedagogies, they are all separate continua. They all exist at the extreme end, where everything's happening to a high level, and at the lower end, where things are happening at a low level. I do encourage you to have a look at the article on this week's material on the website that talks about productive pedagogies, because it actually takes you through all 20 of these. And you know, they're pretty easy to digest when you see them this way. And this is really what Wendy's talking about this week in the material. We can look at some other ones. We've got deep understanding and substantive conversation are two other productive pedagogies. Now, deep understanding is really when students understand concepts. Here at the top end, do at least one of the following: sustain a focus on a significant topic, demonstrate their understanding, and you can see what it is: of problematic nature of information and or ideas. They demonstrate complex understanding by arriving at reason-supported conclusion. They explain how they solve a complex problem. In general, students' reasoning, explanations and arguments demonstrate fullness, whereas at the other end, almost students demonstrate understanding of simple information that they remember. So in between is a whole range of experience. And what we're talking about here is transforming the learner. And this is what Wendy means with the SAMR model, when she starts to actually talk about SAMR later in the unit. SAMR uses technology to help transform, help infuse pedagogy with technology so that it can transform learners a little bit more effectively and efficiently, theoretically. Down here we've got the substantive conversation descriptor. And as you can see, most classroom features dialogue and or logical extension and synthesis occur involving 2 or more sustained exchanges. So basically most teachers will commence a lesson, explain the theory and the goals and the outcomes, and at the lesson they'll go back and they'll finish up with a take-home statement. At the top end, we've got deep, sustained conversation. In my time recently, I went to Cairns High School, where I actually worked for 3 years to set up the International Baccalaureate. And one of the subjects I got to teach there was philosophy to Year 11 and 12 students. And it was just a brilliant classroom to be part of. Substantive conversation was really the core material of that particular classroom. On the other hand, for instance, I've taught in a range of classes too where there's been no substantive conversation. And again, Year 8 maths. Anyone who finds themselves teaching maths, just beware, maths can be very problem-based. But a lot of schools actually take to it like it's a number of facts and a curriculum that has to be pushed through on time every time. So, there's different ways of looking at this curricula. So the message here is all 20 productive pedagogies have a continuum. So, and any classroom we can locate on that continuum. Ideally, we want to be at the top end of it. And if we are, our productive pedagogies are going to help and they're going to work for us. Any questions or comments from anyone at that point? Okay, I'll move on. Wendy picked this up when she talked about low-level pedagogies and high-level pedagogies. And as you can see in the middle, she's got this question, okay, if we've got low-level ones and we've got high-level ones, then what is a digital pedagogy? And obviously it's going to be made up of both of these. For instance, we'll look at later in this slideshow, I've given you some examples of what it might look like at the lower level and how it can be transformed using the SAMR approach through technology, using technology. So at the low level, characteristics ICT is an isolated event. It's an add-on or an enhancement. So a student, for instance, is told to basically go and use Safari to conduct a web search. Computers type up and present assessment tasks. There are online spaces to provide class materials. For instance, it may be a folder in a share drive. There's email assessment and submission, fairly straightforward. Most students have a Dropbox, and in many schools these days, assessment is dropped digitally through spell checks and through confirmation and concordance checks. And it's all about program learning. I mentioned before mathematics, a topic every 2 weeks for the entire year, really whether students get it or they don't. So it's a fairly low-level direct instructional model. At the higher end, the ICT is integral. So task, process and outcome. So you've got those 3 bits. So you've got an online reflective journal. Okay, the ICT, the medium is the media. Okay, peer feedback is critical and something we're trying to encourage in this unit with the blogging. Global networked and collaborative learning with authentic context and audience. So you can dial an expert. You can have an extended classroom. The classroom has no walls. The timetable has no hours and minutes. It's a really interesting notion. Learner-led inquiry down the bottom here, investigating problem solving. So hopefully we can see from this theoretical model here, it summarises the productive pedagogies and crosses the floor and says to them, well, digital pedagogies can be productive too. Not can be, but ought to be. And that's what we're looking at here. Wendy's week is actually an argument for digital productive pedagogy. And one of the productive pedagogies, of course, is the sense of community in the classroom. Now, often we get students working one-on-one, Sometimes you'll see the occasional brave teacher trying group works, breakouts or stations. But ultimately, the whole aim of the community is for each student to find their position within the classroom group, to be appreciated for who they are, what they do, and to have their role recognised within that group, and also beyond the classroom. So we can see here that participation, the building of community, is also a continua that we address with our pedagogy. And pedagogy, of course, being the science of teaching. Now, I've linked it down here to my contributory model of e-learning. And the reason why I keep raising this is because at the end of this course, you've got to come back to a reflection on why you do what you do and how you justify your practice. And really, it's about describing what you do, explaining it, justifying it, and demonstrating it. And that's really what this course is about. So the contributory model basically says, here we have a group of students. Primarily they begin down here with information repository. It could be a course, it could be a Moodle page, it could be something very simple. There's little or no human communication, so it's pretty direct. And the content is not organised for instruction. Okay, it's basically content, sitting, sequenced and linked. Then we have the learner interaction. A teacher will come out and obviously play a fairly direct role, an instruction role. But by the end of the course, you'll notice the loop has completely changed. It's the classroom that's negotiating the learning. It is the students who are actually setting the parameters and asking the deep questions and trying to establish exactly what constitutes deep knowledge in that particular subject. So what we're seeing here is the knowledge building and reflection, and you may see that term and hate that word reflection by the end of this course, but you can see that theoretically and pedagogically it's deeply justified. And we can see here that the content by the end of the course is co-constructed. Okay, it's no longer the domain of the teacher. So that at the end of a good course, at the end of effective teaching, you should have shifted just as much as your students in your learning and thinking. And again, that repository then will be available for you to pick up the next class, and they will continue to generate and benefit as another generation from the learning of this particular group. So we have here the intergenerational functions too of pedagogy. What one group learns, another group benefits from. It's a little bit like evolution. Please jump in and interrupt at any particular point.
I'll jump in.
Rodney, please.
Colin, you mentioned before about the discussion on the blogs or comment on the blogging.
Yes.
Both with, I think it was an email or on the forum today. Can you just clarify what you're expecting there?
Right. Obviously, there's a code of conduct when it comes to blogging and forum. No one wants to flame or smash anybody else. So obviously what we're doing is we're having a look at the blogs. You can link into the blog simply by connecting on those live links in the wikis connections. And you can actually see that there's some really, really good ideas rolling out from people in their blogs. If nothing else, you read it and you can ask for further elaboration. You know, I was really interested in that point you raised. What was your source? And, you know, can you direct me to where I can find out a little bit more about it? Or you can, for instance, say, I had an example like this, and which seems to fit your model. You know, what do you think? And create a little bit of dialogue with the person running the blog. So you'll notice, for instance, that the blogs are actually geared for you to actually engage and comment on. And our hope is that you'll actually become the peers in this network, that you'll talk to each other about the blog, and you know you'll actually start to feed each other some information. Does that answer the question?
Yes. Also, I'm not able to view other people's wikis. They don't appear. Is that or the wikis come in later on in the course?
They will be, yes. We're going to have to deal with the process, and we'll deal with that all at once, Rodney, I think, because we actually have to make our wikis available to other people. You'll notice I've invited everybody. I put together a list and emailed everybody an invitation into my wiki, and we'll certainly look at setting that process up for everyone else too, so that we can get access in and out of each other's wikis. Yeah.
Okay, but for the first part of the course, it's just the blog.
That's right. For the first part, it's right up to week 5. Those 3 reflections are all blog based. Great.
Thanks,
no problems. So looking at Robert Baker from the Learning Foundation, I set up the Learning Foundation, who built a set of assets for Queensland schools and teachers to use. And he came up basically with 6 points from his major research project there. How successful national policies taken account of rapid advances in technology? How are they changing the way that people share, use, develop and process information? The second point is coming down the left-hand side of the page here is on learning theories. Are there models of teaching and learning that effectively harness digital content? And this is part of the report he did. 67 pages long. And again, you only really need to read the executive summary where he answers all of these 6 questions. And these are really good topics for you to blog about. All really simple stuff. The take-home message from Robert Baker's report, basically teachers require detailed pedagogy frameworks that integrate a variety of uses for ICT curriculum assessment, pedagogy, organisation, administration and professional learning. So that entire section of Wendy's course can basically be summarised in Baker asking these 6 questions and then answering it by saying teachers need to use a variety of ICTs. Which pushes us on to this. Now I apologise, this is going to spin your head out. But this is an integrated model where SAMR is overlain on top of Bloom's taxonomy. Now, just a question to you. How familiar are you with Bloom's taxonomy?
Yeah, covered it a little bit, Colin, previously.
Great, good. Then you'll know that Bloom's is essentially a 3-level hierarchy. It's a cognitive model which addresses effectively and primarily the cognitive domain of teaching and learning. And Bloom, again, published this in his 1956 theory treatise. And basically it's become the curriculum planning document, Bloom's taxonomy, for Western education. Now we can see it there in the very middle of the page. Here we've got the graduate attributes and capability. A teacher is a good communicator, energetic, passionate, enthusiastic, with values and ethics, understands their own strengths and limitations, listens, learns from errors and experience, empathises. And around the teacher are 6 processes. Okay, when we look at them, we've got Bloom's cognitive domain. We've got each of the phases of exploration. We can see that as you move out through the circle, okay, the circle is an integrated stepwise motion. Now it looks to be linear, and unfortunately that's one of the criticisms of Bloom's model, that it's a linear model, that you almost start at basics with direct instruction and then through the skills of the teacher you work your way out towards different kinds of activities. But what I've attempted to do with this particular diagram is just show how technology can be superimposed on top of Bloom's model. Because your blog question 2.2 for this week, the reflection basically says, well, how would you do it? How can you see space for yourself here? So if we go to the creative domain, we can see that there are action verbs here. You may ask students, for instance, to find an unusual way. An example of that might be to design a new country. Hypothesize, transform, imagine, change, suggest. All of these are action verbs. The sorts of activities you might get them to do is a video cast, a multimedia presentation, a story, an e-publication or an iBook, make a TV or a radio show or an advertisement, okay, write a rap song. And all of the SAMR brings to this model a whole new range of productivity. So while we could do all of these things under Bloom's model, we could do them and we have done them and continue to do them. SAMR suggests that we can integrate and infuse technology into this process to lead to even better and deeper understandings. And that's really asking you what this week's blog is all about. How do you see yourself doing that? What material do you have to work with and think about? Evaluation, look, another one of the domains here, another cognitive domain that comes from Bloom. For instance, you can ask students to rank from most important to least important. You can ask them a whole range of things here, collaborate, appraise, critique. Okay, you could get them to do movie reviews, a whole range of things. The types of activities they can do, okay, are all listed here. You can actually have a court trial. I've seen this done very well by some teachers where they've taken a famous history character and put that person on trial. And they've given each person in the classroom a different role. And of course they've videotaped that and done a news report, which has been of course the media component that they've interjected into it. So this will be available for you to have a look at online again. As I said, I'll record this, but really it's just a mnemonic. It's just an expression for you to sort of say, look, this is how SAMR can work with Blooms and can infuse technology into what have been traditional teaching domains. Anyone like to comment or ask a question about? Good, we'll move on. Oh, and I do prompt you down here in the corner, Robin Collins' article, Skills for the 21st Century. She brings Bloom into the 21st century and also supports this particular diagram as well. So she will give you a lot more background to this. But bear in mind, it's not rocket science. The only thing that's rocket science is rocket science. As you can see, there are so many technical applications wrapped around Blooms. Our invitation as teachers is to learn how to pick them up. And of course, therein lies the challenge. And where does SAMR fit in? Okay, high-end digital pedagogy can support the following. Students use ICT critical thinking for access, integration, management, evaluation. They use ICT for new understandings, to participate as global citizens through collaboration across local, national, international borders. One of my favourite technologies is robotics. And throughout my career, I've actually been quite heavily involved in running, conducting and launching robotics competitions across the Asia-Pacific region. And we've had a global competition where not one single team has left their host country. It's all being done by video conferencing and video links. So this is the value of ICTs. It can shrink the world. The nature of collaboration is transformed using ICT. It can transform learning as well, creating inquiry, connecting to sources of information. As a teacher, you can have a little unit where you piece together a panel of experts, and students can liaise with that panel of experts to guide and structure their learning and their projects. As a teacher, all you have to do is sit back and enjoy the learning. ICTs can support thinking, organising, planning solutions, modelling, visualising the invisible, okay, concept mapping. ICTs allow learners to build solutions and products through highly creative, expressive and reflective processes, and students can document their thinking along their learning journey, returning to it to evaluate its appropriateness, edit it, develop it, use it to change direction. And that sounds a little bit like our blogging task, assessment task 1, where you're doing 3 consecutive blogs and then you're coming back, what a gyrus would call double loop learning. You're coming back and reflecting on what you were thinking just 3 weeks ago. And I actually put it to you, you'll be quite surprised at how much your thinking shifts in that short period of time. SAMR model. Here's again another example of looking at it from a Bloom perspective. So if we've got your classic classroom tasks, note-taking, research, presentation, file sharing, reading and assessment, they're all things that are happening in a classroom in the year 2017. We put the SAMR model on top of it, substitution, augmentation, modification, redefinition. So we substitute old technologies with new. We augment the old technologies with new approaches. We modify them for functionality and purpose, so the teacher then interjects and may suggest a better piece of software, a better app or an application. And we redefine. From that point, we redefine the social purpose of learning, so the student goes from being the learner and transforms actually to being the co-creator of a knowledge resource or a knowledge artifact. When we look at note-taking, we can trace that across the page. If we look at research, we've got using Safari, a simple web browser, as your first step, substitution. So instead of using a library, we now use the internet. Augmentation, okay, instead of just using Safari, we actually create a bookmarks page and we share the notes using the share button. Okay, we can then modify that even further. We can download and annotate that particular bookmark and share notes using software like Notability. And from there, we can actually produce a collaborative mind map where students can get together, they can post their own annotations, they can review each other's annotations, they can actually rank and assign values to what they think are the most relevant pieces or the most compelling pieces of knowledge in that repertoire, in that research repertoire. So you can see here that we are, taking the situation where students come in, there's knowledge out there, there's a library. And by that stage, they've actually reorganised that library and turned it into a learning framework which is more relevant to them. They've taken ownership of it. couple of ideas here. I had a message from a student during the week, and he basically said, look, I teach history and home economics and I'm struggling to get my head into how I can transform pedagogy using SAMR. Well, here's a couple of nice examples. A Year 8 social science teacher wrote 2 letters about an event that might have occurred in the classroom the day before. One was a letter written from the perspective of a teacher and the other from the perspective of students. The views presented were largely divergent around a single incident. The teacher very cleverly and creatively utilised discussion about these 2 letters to pursue the evidence in historical research and, the issue of evidence in historical research and writing. Extensive discussion followed and many issues raised, including power, the production of knowledge, the nature of truth, the creation of historical narratives, and the use of historical sources. One of the striking features of this lesson was the studious and enthusiastic way in which the students engaged in the activity. Because of its perceived relevance, they were eager to pursue the discussion and monitor their own behaviour and that of their peers. This ensured a range of contributions from some of the less vocal students. Now, the question is, how do you enhance that using technology? Anybody's welcome to volunteer a solution if they like. And the obvious one there is blogs. Or you get students to actually create a wiki based on historical evidence, a historical figure. For instance, recently I saw a teacher pose to his class just the simple question, who was Adolf Hitler? And from a class of 27 students, they probably finished up with about 23 different answers. Another example down here, rich media sources. A Year 11 modern history class, largely consisting of middle-class students of Anglo-Celtic origin, was looking at the issue of the stolen generation. It's not mandatory curriculum modern history, however, but the syllabus does list a number of themed units that have to be covered during the course, one of which is imperialism, racial conflict and compromises, so you can see it fits under there. The teacher commented that he saw understanding the issues around the stolen generation as an essential component in the reconciliation process. During the course of the lesson, he drew on a number of texts written by Indigenous Australians, the Aboriginal singer-songwriter Archie Roach. The students discussed a number of these texts and considered why saying sorry is an important controversial issue within contemporary Australia. Rich media sources? Okay, we could then link, for instance, to some of the treaties in North America. We could link to some of the treaties in New Zealand. We could compare the social policy in both countries. Okay, again, there's lots of opportunities to augment and extend this classroom by using the transformation of technology. Home economics. This is a really sweet little unit, I thought. A good little example. It's a very rich pedagogical task. In preparation for Mother's Day, Year 4 students in a primary ethnic school community were asked to bring in catalogues that they found in their letterboxes at home. The students were then asked to examine the catalogues to see if the people like their mothers were represented. Classroom discussion included factors such as cultural identity, socioeconomic background, visual representations, and so on. Now note how this transforms. The knowledge was about middle, white class, attractive people in catalogues. The experience was most students felt the women represented in the catalogue were nothing like their mothers. The teacher asked them to look through clip art for suitable graphics or alternatively draw or construct an image of their mothers through a drawing program that could be used in a catalogue. The students were then asked to look at the items for sale for Mother's Day in the catalogue and conduct surveys to see whether or not their mothers would actually like those items or not. In many cases, the answer was no. The class then discussed why these items had in fact been chosen for catalogues and whose interests were being represented. The generic structure of the catalogues was also dissected, particular attention paid to the language to encourage sales. They finally used the knowledge they acquired and the visual images of their mother to construct an entirely new catalogue. So you can see this transformative process fully at work here in this simple home economics example, and that a teacher had the insight to prepare that and deliver that so well at a Year 4 level. Comments on that one? Anyone like to comment, make an observation?
Colin, I think that's a wonderful example. Previous examples, I've sort of been playing devil's advocate in my head, and from the limited time in schools, I'm sitting there thinking there's no way there's enough resources in every classroom for students to be connected online, I suppose, within every class for 70 minutes, just
Yes.
through sheer lack of technology. But I like that little example there because it wouldn't have involved a lot of infrastructure or a lot of computers to create that little learning situation.
Thanks for your comment, Rodney. And I thoroughly agree. I mean, most school-based computers would have Publisher, or some of the Macs would actually have even more interactive programs, so the students would have a great time engaging with the technology there. We can see that what we sometimes think is hard work, what we sometimes think is out there, if we just pause long enough, we can actually see, well, what would I want if I wanted to move from some situation where someone's giving me a lecture on cultural appropriateness or cultural role modelling, where someone's letting me find out for myself how this is represented and where I find it, and just how influential it is in my daily life as a young person. I mean, I know which one I prefer. I prefer the story version, the second one. And I think if we can teach in the way that we would tell that story, we are now entering into that deep understanding, into those rich pedagogies that we're being challenged to pick up. Reflection task 2.2. Write a reflection task that draws together Bloom's taxonomy, your understanding of pedagogy and the SAMR model as it relates to your teaching context. Be sure to access the ideas of others in their blogs, comment, draw from their ideas, reflect on your own and make improvements. And slides 10 to 11 of this presentation may help you. That was the wheel that I presented to you, and also the SAMR classroom profile. But let's just talk about this. Does anyone have a particular question or a particular block when they look at this task?
Yeah, Colin, I asked earlier on the chat if you can send these slides to us via email or post them on Moodle somewhere. I'm not sure if that happened the first week. Mine's a bit of a mess at the moment.
Definitely. It did happen the first week, and what I'll do is I'll actually put a link to them through the distance forum. So what I'll do is I actually record this as a video and stick it on YouTube, and you can then either download it or just watch it through the distance forum.
Thank you. No
problems.
But getting back to your question, I'm working in or studying for industrial technologies, and I'll be honest, I'm struggling to see how we can utilise ICTs just through the sheer lack of computer spaces, etc. Where I've done my prac, and that was only one school, so I'm trying to get around that. I was sort of thinking, with the SAMR model and Bloom's taxonomy, traditionally, old sketches were done by hand with grey lead. Then obviously CAD software come available, so there's a substitute for doing CAD, and can be moved to the augmentation through using that software for layering, measuring, copying, mirroring, and presentation formats. So I was going to talk along that lines and try and take that further. Yeah, that's where I was heading.
Brilliant. And look, that sounds absolutely spot on, Rodney. Absolutely spot on. Yeah, and the nature of the reflection is just, and this is what we're asking you to do, just think about what it is you'd set out to do. Now, in my own blog this week, if you want to get on and have a look at what I've done, and I'm not doing this because I think I'm right. I've deliberately done a light-on answer, theoretically, because I don't want to say this is an exemplar. This is just an example of how you may want to reflect. And so what I've done, it actually is on my blog. It's there as task 2.2. And I've just included a couple of the pictures with an explanation, linked it to my model of learning, and talked about productive pedagogies in there, and why I think technology, and the particular technologies embedded here, can help me to transform learning into a more efficient and effective modality. So yeah, that's there for you to have a look at as a model. I've also put up task 2.1. And again, I'm saying to you, these are not there because they're wonderful examples. They're there basically to say to you, this is really how difficult and how easy reflection is. And the whole task here is, once you've done that, is to then try, if you can, to get onto other people's blogs and have a look, because you may just discover that it is actually, it's a field of gold. There are some fabulous ideas being rolled out amongst the students in this course. Get on there, and if you, for nothing else, you just look at it and say, that's a really great blog. Where did you get your inspiration?
Sorry.
Yes, fire away.
How many, if we go on and have a look at blogs every week, are we meant to be looking at a certain amount each week and commenting on a certain amount of blogs, or how many people should we share our blog with? Is there a certain number?
Your blog is open to anybody who wants to have a look at it. So basically they can go to the wikis page in our course.
Is that the one that you set up for us? Like I got an email saying that we've had a wiki set up for us. Is that what you're talking about there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And does anybody need me to show you where that is?
So if we just follow the link in the in our email, and it took me to my page, and then like where do you go from there? Is that how we share our blog, or do we just email people in the course our blog work? Is that what we do? Yes,
it is. Look, you've answered both questions there, so I'll just clarify that. What I'm doing is just booting up the Moodle now to show you just the map there. Okay. I'm sure if you're wondering, Georgia, there's 20.
Yeah, I'm really confused about whether we need to even worry about the wiki yet, or what the go is.
No, and fortunately Rodney's asked that question earlier, so no, you don't worry about the wiki yet.
Sorry, I missed the first 10 minutes, so I don't know if I'm asking the same question.
No, that's all good. All right, so here we've got the course page up. And over here you can see this wikis link on the left-hand side. Under activities.
Yep.
Okay, so once we do is we just simply click that, and it takes us to the directory here, Web Contact Wikis. We click on there, and as you can see, the distance one is highlighted because that's my cohort of students. I click on that, and it takes us to everybody's individual blog address. And down there, for instance, I can click, for instance, on Helen Anderson's. I was looking at hers earlier today. Helen's doing a fantastic job. And for instance, you jump on her and you can sort of see the depth and the thought that's gone into people's wikis. Again, it presents very nicely. Her reflections flow in sequence.
So how has that address been put up there? Has she put her web address somewhere for you, or? When you create your blog,
it creates it in there. So what you do is, I'll just go back. Okay, so what you do is there you empty simply this, as we scroll down the bottom here, Georgia, you'll see there are blank boxes. Okay, so what you do is you actually click into there and you can actually add your details into them.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
No problems. And
is there a way to follow somebody's wiki like through notification? So if somebody posts something up rather than randomly clicking on everybody's, say if we created like a little network with a group of people, is there a way that we can then follow their blogs when they post something?
You know, because we're using different, some people are using Weebly and some people are using Blogspot. So I don't know that there is a uniform way to do that. That's a really good question. I'll jump into Weebly and see. I know Blogspot can do it. You can notify your group, but you have to create the group first. And that can be a complex way. Probably the best way is a more informal way where you get into a cluster of people, 4 or 5 of you, who are going to regularly work each other's blogs over and develop that knowledge together. And it's a bit like the Pelodron in a cycling group, isn't it? You can go faster and you can ride further, and you can, you know, like birds, when you see birds flying, there's 4 or 5 of them that fly higher than the rest, and they're all in one small group. And this is the power of groups. I think this is the power of working together, you know, and that synergy. So, you know, be a Pelodron. Get together, have a group of 4 or 5 of you who are going to work each other's blogs on a regular basis. You only need to do that to week 5, because then the blog task finishes and then we actually start moving more into the wikis. All right, so any other questions about Reflection Task 2.2? I mean, it's a challenging one, definitely, and that's the whole purpose of this. Wendy Fazzo has actually set out to stop you in your tracks and actually get you to think about who you are as a teacher and how you're going to deliver some of the complexity that you've been, you know, that you will need to deliver. And the real strength of this course, I think, is getting you to think about it first. Getting into a school and working out which technologies are going to work, which won't. What is my bottom line? You know, what is the minimum standard I will use to guarantee that I'm not going to have tech failure day in, day out? Are there any other questions or comments from people? I'll open the floor to anything general.
Yeah, just going back to Rodney, how he was talking about graphics before. With industrial technologies, is there any way, like, is graphics all you can talk about through industrial technologies, or is there something in woodwork and metalwork? Because it's pretty well you show them, they do it sort of, you know.
Look, I'm just wondering if we could just mute the mics there while we're not talking, it'd be great. Look, to answer your question, yes, there is. I've saw a young teacher actually teaching manual arts locally at William Ross High School recently, and you know, he's a pre-service teacher, and he was actually teaching the year 11 and 12 manual arts using a lot of technology now, and it wasn't just CAD. You know, he was doing the sculpting stuff. He was using photographs, combining it with presentation formats as well, where, you know, students basically had to build like a resource or a portfolio of tasks and photograph that portfolio of tasks, and they all had to meet technical specifications. And, you know, that's the sort of thing that he was looking at doing there, which was really, really very effective. Any other questions?
Yeah, Colin, Rodney. Sorry, I just had to duck out before, but I'm wondering, did someone address the issue of your created a wiki BAS 17? Because I got this email which I was worried was a bogus email about WikiLeaks about Wiki Spaces confirming
Yes.
confirming my email address for BAS 17.
That's right, yes. Yep, that was sent out by me. And I sent it to all members of the course list, again, so that you've got access to my wiki, so that when we roll into the wiki component, we start doing that more regularly and with more pedagogical focus. We can, you know, you'll all be a member of my wiki, so it'll be just another way we can communicate.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then ultimately we'll all invite others into our wikis and create up our little community networks.
So just to clarify, that link that you sent us, that's something we can use to then go and have a look at what you've got. That correct? So it's not like what I will be able to use when I need to create mine. That's just so we can comment and view yours. Is that it?
That's correct. But you can get on mine, and you can actually edit mine. You can actually change things.
Right.
And that's the caution with the WikiLeaks thing. Yeah, it's WikiLeaks with the wiki spaces. Yeah. So more about that caution when we get closer to the time.
Sure, yeah, because I haven't made my wiki page yet, but yeah, I was just wanting to check that wasn't my page that you've created.
No.
I don't know. So
No.
no. Okay, thank you.
You create your own and post your address in your little box on the Wikispace site on our Moodle unit page. Any other questions?
So if it's not our wiki page, then why, when you click on the link, does it come up and say Georgia Holden and log out and log in and stuff like that?
Because it's given you it should have given you an identity
Okay.
and a password.
Okay.
So
we still have to make our own, but
you still have to make your own. Yep.
we can use that link to just look at yours and comment on yours.
That's right. And as we go about setting up the wiki and we have some technical issues and problems, I'll be able to direct you to the resources on mine and sort of say, have a look at this, post number 3 or post number 4. So at the moment you would have your name and you would have distance -1 to 46.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there would be your password. And that just gets you into this wiki. And not that we're using it much at the moment, but it will get you in there and we'll be able to use it for future purposes.
Okay, thanks.
No problems. Just thinking ahead.
Hang on, one more question. Were you going to show some ways to upload the table? That was, I think, the task 2.1.
Look, I probably don't have time to do that today, but what I can do is there was a really good set. What, using Weebly or using Blogspot?
Yeah, I'm using Weebly. I haven't really played around with it yet. I'm still fiddling with my table because I don't want to upload it if I'm still editing it. But yeah, I was kind of holding off to see if there was a specific way to do it.
Yeah, look, my advice to you would be to build the table first in a Word document and on a stable platform, and from there just experiment with pasting.
Okay, I'll give that a go.
Yeah, I know in Blogspot it goes up, it looks fine. Weebly apparently looks better. Everyone who's using Weebly says it's a bit of a Rolls-Royce version, so I must get in there and have a look. It's not a blog technology I've used before, so.
I did mine last night, and what you had to do was once you're in a Word document, you had to save it as a is it a HTML file, and then once it's then saved, then you go, like you close it all down, and then you have to right click and open it up as in a notepad, and then that will give you your code. And then so you copy all the text, so just go Control-A, copy all the text, and then you then go into your Weebly, and there'll actually be an embedded code, you know, like, kind of like title, but it'll be embedded code, and you just drag that across, and then once it's in there, then you just click that and then paste your code into that, and then it's it.
Right, brilliant. You may want to post those into the forum, that information for Weebly users. Another way I imagined is you could probably save your table as an image and just upload it as a picture.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of doing, taking like a screenshot of it, but I wasn't sure if it would be very clear. I haven't tested it yet, so I'll have a play around with it later and see how it goes.
And please post your results. Let people know what works and what doesn't. So we just had some fabulous advice there about Weebly, and it makes me want to get in there and try it. So thank you for that. All right, if there's no other questions or points, we'll end the session there, and I'll put it on to start recording and buffering. So thank you very much. And for a small group, we certainly had plenty to say. So thank you.
Thanks, Colin. Catch you next week.
Thank you.
See you next week.
See you later, guys.
Thank you.